returned late drunk after a wild bachelor party that went too far. When I rang bell, this happened. This is one of the craziest things that has ever happened to me, and it changed my life. Hi Redditors, my name is Lane77 and I am divorced with no children. I would not be saying my age either. I actually managed to ruin not only my marriage, but also my family and social life too. It was just this night that everything started going downhill. My car was gone, like disappeared into thin air from what I could tell. I did not see my car where I had left it and I was shocked. I had to make some calls to ask what happened after the party. It was just the night before, so I doubt that something had happened to a car that was parked in a secure compound. And then I quickly remembered something and checked my purse, only to find that the key was no longer in it, but I did not remember losing it since I never pulled them out the previous night. I was panicking and I knew I would be in serious trouble if Zane, my husband, was going to find out that I had lost the car he had gifted me after our wedding. But I also did not want to lie, so I decided to call him and tell him. He was pretty understanding, so he would not fault me too much if I told him rather than him finding out about it himself. So I rang him up, trying and failing to hide the panic in my voice as I spoke to him, and told him that I could not find the car where I had left it the previous night, and he only chuckled on the other side of the line. I got confused and asked him why he was laughing, to which he responded that he had left home earlier so he could get the car taken to a mechanic for some maintenance, and I could not help the sigh of relief that exited in my body, which only made Zane laugh some more. Now, the reason why I was looking for my car in the first place was actually a party. What would a married woman be doing at a party, you might be wondering? See, I was invited to a bachelor party, and the bachelor party that I was invited to was not like your everyday bachelor parties where maybe it would just be ladies renting out the VIP lounge of a club or something, or maybe men going to a strip club or something before the weddings. This one was a mixed party, with both the guys and the ladies partying out in a mansion. A friend's mansion, actually. I promised my husband that I would be home before it got too late or too dark, and that if it got too late, I would call him to come pick me up. I was getting drunk, and I tended to cry and pass out when I got drunk, and I'd sooner bite off and swallow my tongue than embarrass myself in front of so many people. So I decided that I would leave before I was too far gone and make it in time before Zane got worried about me. I did not expect that I would stay there for so long. I did not even plan to stay at the house for too long. But before I knew it, I had stayed past midnight and even ended up participating in certain games at the party. Some little sort of childish games. And I ended up drinking so much that I could feel my eyes stinging, and I decided that it was time to leave, so I went to the guests of honor, who happened to be friends of mine, and bid them farewell. The lady, my childhood friend named Melody, whined and begged me to stay longer, but I only laughed and told her that I really had to go, so she agreed finally and let go of my arm so I could leave the house and head home. I told my friend that the plan was to call Zane to come pick me up, so I would need to go outside to make the call. I had been calling Zane for a while and he was not picking up. I was more or less panicking, but I knew that I could not drive home anymore, so I would have to take a cab or maybe call a designated driver. But the designated driver might just get me kidnapped, or so my paranoid self thought, so I decided that I would take a cab home for the night. I took a cab and I was dropped off close to my driveway. I staggered my way to the door and struggled to get the door open with my keys, but while the keys fit in the keyhole, it simply would not budge, so I decided to poke around at the side of the door to find the doorbell. I did just that and I rang the doorbell, pressing constantly because my drunk self thought it was fun to push on the button. A very pissed, and I don't know how to describe the other emotion on his face, came out to open the door. I found myself trying to force myself to sober up. I mean, it was a funny sight to take in with me. So drunk and trying to straighten up in the heels that I had walked out of the house in because I saw my husband's face. He simply raised a brow and crossed his arms over his chest before leaning against the door frame to observe me more. I was squirming under his critical gaze as we had a staring contest. A staring contest which I quickly lost because I could not keep staring into his cold eyes. Finally, it was a sigh. A very angry sigh from Zane that broke the silence, and his words made me stumble backwards. Zane told me to go back to where I was coming from, and my eyes went wide, and I shook my head rapidly, and I asked him what he meant. Zane only let out a dry laugh and told me he was teasing me and that I should get my drunk self inside before I embarrassed him more. I was scared, but the smile Zane gave me made me relax. He even extended an arm for me to take as he helped me into the house so I would not fall on my face on the way to the stairs, helping me climb one step at a time and holding my waist to steady me on my feet till we were in our room, and I almost fell on my face because my knees buckled in relief. And Zane laughed at me before going down on one knee to help me out of my heels as I sat on the floor. I thanked him, feeling embarrassed and shyly looking off to the side while he worked and rubbed on my ankles too. He ran a bath for me and told me to go in while he made the bed so we could go to bed. I was so damn tired that I did not notice any other thing that my husband did after he returned from the bathroom and asked me to go in. I didn't even notice that he had picked up the clothes I had removed on the room floor, and the shoes too. I only remember my head hitting soft pillows, and then I was off in a dreamless void of sleep. I woke up pretty late the next morning, but I did not bother with it since it was a Saturday, and I could always just decide to sleep in some more, but I knew I could not, and I got up quickly with a massive hangover that threatened to rip my skull apart. I struggled to get out of the bed and down the water and aspirin that Zane had no doubt left for me on the bedside drawer, and then I hopped in the bathroom to finish my morning routine and leave the house. I needed to go get my car where I had left it at my friend's place. I could not find my husband when I woke up, just a small sticky note on the kitchen counter with a plate with 2 sandwiches on it. The note read that his father had sent for him, so he had to leave early to attend to the man, and I only nodded as I put the note inside the drawers that I often left all his little notes before digging into my breakfast. It was steadily approaching 2 weeks, and I had yet to see my car, and Zane was not telling me anything anymore. Not about the car and not about the car shop he had taken the car to. I had no idea, so I was stuck either having him drive me to work or just taking a cab if Zane was either not around or too busy to take me to work. Of course, I had been asking Zane about my car and when I would be getting it back, but Zane always gave me vague answers like later, or he would call the mechanics or call the shop to ask about the car and the progress of the servicing. And knowing Zane and his temper sometimes when I nagged too much, I made sure to swallow all unnecessary comments and stop asking about the car. I felt that he would give me a definite answer when he was ready to talk to me. Zane stopped eating my food a week later after the last time I had asked him about my car and decided to let the matter rest. He would always say that he was not hungry or that he was not in the mood to eat what I had prepared for us, so I would end up eating dinner and breakfast alone every day. I did not know if he was sick or something else was wrong with him, since I did not see or notice any tells that he was sick, and he did not look wrung out like he did when he was feeling burnt out. He was just unnaturally cold to me. I was perplexed and I did not know what to do, so I called his older sister. She had picked up the phone asking who was on the line, and I had frozen up. Zane's sister was someone I talked to a lot, so she would definitely have my number, but here she was, on the other end of the line, asking who it was that she was talking to. I quickly gathered my thoughts and told her that I was the one calling. I called my name, saying it was me talking, and the woman's voice turned cold as she demanded to know the reason I was calling her. She was rude and harsh about it, and I could feel my temper rising, but I stamped it down, reminding myself that my sister-in-law was far older than I was, so I kept my voice calm and respectful. I told her that her brother was not eating at home anymore and that I was worried about him. She asked if it was her business to know about her brother's dealings and why I would be calling her to ask her such things. I replied saying that I was just scared for him and I wanted to confirm if maybe he had said something to her about what was wrong with me. My sister-in-law suddenly turned hostile and asked if it was my business what he might have told his family members in private and why I would want to concern myself with whatever it was that he was doing in his free time. I had never heard my sister-in-law so harsh with me before. She was literally yelling on the phone. I quickly apologized profusely, tears welling in my eyes, and she replied that I would have nothing to be sorry about if I learned to mind my business, and that I should endeavor to avoid calling her for useless matters again, and she promptly hung up, the receiver slamming down harshly as she put it down and the line went dead. It continued like that. Zane did not really have time for me anymore, and just like he started to avoid having dinner with me, it evolved into Zane straight up rejecting my cooking on the grounds that it was not what he wanted to eat at that moment. The dishwasher started to fill up with more pots and pans than what was normal in 24 hours, and the fridge had more leftovers all in plastic containers that now had labels on them. Some were labeled Zane, and I was asked no to tamper with them. Zane and I slept in one bed, but it did not feel intimate as before anymore. It was like a wide space had formed between us, and Zane had no intention of making a move for either of us to cross to either side and meet each other. It was like Zane was comfortable with all of it and even encouraged it. It was during a girls' night out with my friends, Melody, Tasha, and two others, that I finally broke down after a few rounds of shots and other drinks. I was crying when I began to complain about what had been going on with Zane and I, my head on the shoulder of Melody's while I cried. Melody, of course, comforted me, rubbing my back and shushing me with soothing encouragement and teasing me alike just to get me to relax, to calm down. My other friends followed suit and joined Melody in trying to comfort me, but from the corner of my eye I saw Tasha roll her eyes, and this was followed by her clicking her tongue, and she proceeded to ask me if I was that much of a child to come crying over a simple matter such as a man ignoring me. I looked at her and angrily retorted that the man in question was my legally wedded husband. Tasha rolled her eyes again at anger. I had raised my voice at her words, but she only laughed lightly and told me that the answer to my problem was as easy as my coming out for girls' night to grab some drinks. I was puzzled by this, and Tasha gave me a look that said she was unimpressed. I asked her what she was talking about, and she laughed again, telling me that I could always just corner him at home and seduce him into talking about what was wrong with him. It made so much sense in my drunk mind, and my demeanor changed as my mood brightened up again, and I was calling for another round of drinks again. But I missed the weird look that Tasha and Melody were giving me. Melody's was one of worry and panic, but Tasha's was unrecognizable, and I should have heeded the warning bells that were going off in my head. But I was too drunk and excited to dwell on it too much, so I went back to making silly toasts with the girls as we laughed and partied long into the night. It was a weekend after all. My rings disappeared a month later. One was a pretty little silver band with a beautiful cut diamond on it, and the other one was a plain silver band but was made with a layer of silver on top of the band rings. These very significant rings disappeared. The first ring was my engagement ring, and the second one with the more intricate design was my wedding band, and it was gone. I had probably lost something as nice as them. I had only taken them off to do the dishes as usual, and my husband had by the time I was finished with my chore. Other rings had vanished into thin air. If I remember correctly, Zane had walked into the house briefly while I was in the kitchen, and he had called out to me. I had answered him and had seen him poke his head into the kitchen briefly to give me an odd look, observing me while I did the dishes, giving him a small, sweet smile that he did not really return, but I did not think much of it because Melody had advised me to take everything happening like it was just a phase. My rings had disappeared afterwards, and I did not see any sense in faulting Zane as the culprit, because he had next to no reason to take the bands that he had given to me himself. Even the car that had been taken registered as nothing in my head, so I just felt that I had lost the ring. I actually went to have the wedding band remade. The design and feel was familiar to me, and I had images of the ring so I could get it made again anyway, so I rested easy. Zane left the house after a week later. A week after I had lost the rings and went to have the wedding band remade. He straight up moved out of the house. I asked him where he was going to after he returned from work one Tuesday evening, and he just replied that he was going to his family house for a visit. Yeah, right. A family visit with a big old suitcase that had his work clothes and his dress shoes. And I pointed this out only to receive nothing short of a growl from Zane at my questioning. Zane asked me how it was my business if he wanted to stay at his family house for more than the weekend. He said that since I was desperate to know his movements so badly, he would just about stay there for the next week, saying I could have the house to myself and do as I pleased, and he shouldered past me, knocking me off balance in the process, but not hard enough to land me on the floor. His exact words as he got into his car were that I could bring in a new partner if I so desired, and it was his words that stung more than the light throbbing in my shoulder that he had hit. I was confused by this. I did not understand how he would say such a thing to me, and I wanted to run out after him and demand answers. But knowing how Zane was, I would not get an answer, but would rather get on his bad side. I decided to talk to his friends about his strange behavior, and who better to ask than his closest friend in our joint friend group, a former classmate of his from school who was from my hometown and someone I knew too. Andy. Andy did not appreciate me calling him out of the blue to ask him questions about Zane, and he stated as much as he picked up the phone. He sounded irritated and disgusted just hearing my voice, and he rudely asked me to hurry up with what I was hinting at so he could get back to going about his business. I apologized almost as rudely and assured him that I would not waste his time, as I only needed to hear from someone as close as he was to Zane, without being family, about his strange behavior. I wanted an outsider's view of his newfound attitude. Andy simply sighed and asked me what gave me the idea that he would give me the answers that I needed. There was that curt tone that was bordering on rude, and I could barely contain myself at this point. My in-laws had been rude to me already, and I also did not appreciate being spoken to that way by a person I pretty much grew up with. I hit Andy with my displeasure, and the man just sighed, apologizing and explaining that he did not know how to relate with me, so he had to be rude. I told him I was confused, and he only asked me to go and check our friend group chat. He said I might find some answers in there, and the line went dead before I could question him further. Andy did not pick up another call after that, not even the next day. I had not been active in the group chat for a while, so I did not even understand what Andy had been getting at. But it still irritated me that I needed to check a group chat to know what was wrong with my husband rather than him telling me by himself, even while we shared a bed, up until the point that he was quite literally running away from me at this point. I got on the group chat again, and so many messages began to pop up, so quickly that I was not able to keep up, but one pointed message from Tasha tagging my profile with words shameful caught my eye just as quickly as it slid past and other messages rolled in. Suddenly a video was tagged in the chat and passed quickly, the video that I had missed earlier, so I quickly marked the message with the video tag for later, while the sea of messages continued to grow until it ended up with me being straight up booted from the group, like removed from the group. I could not reply to any of the messages anymore. I could tell from the date that I was removed from the group chat around a week ago, and since I did not open the group for so long, I could still see messages. I was shocked by this, but I decided I would ask questions about that later since I had something more important to deal with, so I decided I would just scroll through all the messages from before I was removed from the group. The messages were around 2 months old. The timeline coincided with the time Zane started to act weird at home. I was still scrolling through and reading some frankly disturbing messages that all hinted at me being an evil woman, and some messages shunning Melody for trying to defend me, threatening to kick her out of the group if she continued to defend me, so Melody went silent while the others continued to send messages. And then I saw a message from Zane saying that it would be better to talk when the subject of the matter, the root of the problem, was removed from the group first. The messages there contained detailed plans for Zane to leave the country and maybe find new pastures, and these sort of confusing messages continued until I was removed from the group. I was still trying to make sense of the cryptic messages when my phone began to ring. A call from Melody that I was going to straight up ignore because I was in no mood to speak to anyone, especially one of my friends who apparently had a hand in my husband's recent behavior. But Melody was quite determined and kept calling after I had missed the call, and even after I had cut the call, refusing to answer. I decided to just humor her determination because, after all, I could always go back to what I was doing after the call. My friend Melody sounded frantic on the phone as I picked up the call. I could barely make out what she was saying over her panicked muttering and shrieks, so I told her to calm down and talk to me, to speak clearly. Melody told me that she was going to send me a text message with an attachment, a video attachment, that I needed to watch immediately. I dropped the call. She also said not to scream or do anything too rash, but to rather call her back immediately after I had watched the video first. I obliged, and I hung up so I could read the text and watch the attached video. The camera shook a bit as the person behind the camera adjusted the angle a bit. I could see familiar silhouettes, and then the camera spun rapidly to land on a scene with a bunch of people gathered in a circle, chanting loudly and laughing while they held on to glasses of champagne and vodka and beer bottles. The cameraman walked forward and pushed through the crowd, a flashlight turning on to light up the scene in the otherwise dim-lighted room. In the middle of the circle sat a man with a woman on his lap. The woman on his lap, with her arms around his neck, was wearing a top familiar baby blue, flared ankle-length gown with a slit up to mid-thigh, and familiar sparkly block-heeled strappy heels. Her hair was done in a simple side-swept style, and her earrings were silver hoops. The woman was me, and my lips were on his. That outfit was exactly what I had worn to Melody and her fiancé's bachelor party a while ago. I was screwed, and I was so close to a panic attack as I forced my shaking hands and body to ease up on the tremors and dial up Melody again. It was the very same video that I had seen in the group chat before I was removed from the chat. The video that Tasha had tagged me with to call me a shameless woman, and that Zane had actually dropped in the group as I had seen, and left to reply after a few days. I was shaking in my boots, shaking from my head to my toes as I looked at my feet, barely hearing Melody screaming at me to calm down over the phone. I did not even realize that I had called her back, but what I did realize after a minute of staring at the floor was that my vision was blurring and my thighs were getting wet. Tears. I cried as I sat motionless on the couch and eventually had to drop the call so I could crumple to the floor and curl up into a ball to cry some more loudly till I fell asleep, mostly from exhaustion. I fell asleep on the floor and woke up to the sound of my phone ringing. I had gotten so many calls from Melody and some worried texts too, so I groggily texted her back that I was okay and that I would see her later so we could talk, and then I got up to get ready for work. I tried calling Zane to talk to him, but he either ignored my calls or told me that we had nothing to talk about. I tried to go see him too, but he refused to see me, and his older sister disgraced me out of the compound, calling me names and hitting me, and she told me not to come back and look for her brother again, since he himself did not want to see me anymore. I left in tears, sobbing in the back seat of a cab as I made my way back home. I was still making sense of everything when Zane called to say he sent me a text and told me to call back after I saw the contents. The sight of that video again had me tearing up again, but I decided to suck it up and call Zane, who started the talk with asking how the video was, if I enjoyed the view, to which I shakily answered that I did not, and Zane chuckled at my answer. Me why I denied not enjoying the view. Zane told me not to deny anything, pointing out that I was enjoying myself so much in the video that he doubted that I was even sorry. I tried to speak, but Zane shut me down, saying that he would be the one doing the talking and I only had to listen. He told me that he would be leaving me to do as I pleased and to move on with whoever I wanted without any restraint or hindrance, since he would also be leaving to do as he pleased. He admitted to being aware of the video long since the day of the bachelor party, and he had already made up his mind about it, so nothing I did would change his mind. Zane said this with finality and hung up, leaving me to my devices, well, tears actually. All efforts to get back in contact with Zane proved fruitless and a total waste of time because he did not pick up the phone, still wouldn't see me, and certainly gave me no room to explain myself in any way. So I was stuck waiting for when Zane would deem me worthy of his presence and agree to speak with me. It was a month later that I saw Zane again, and it was in my office that we met. He had come to my office holding onto a decent-sized brown envelope that he said was for me. He slammed a brown envelope on my desk and asked me to quickly sign the papers inside. I had seen this coming, but I did not expect it to be so soon. The papers inside the envelope were definitely divorce papers. I had tried begging and trying to explain myself after we had the fight about that god-awful video, but he did not listen to me and said he was going to go ahead with the divorce since he was not sure that I would not get involved in a bigger issue or scandal than the one at the party. Zane was already a free man in his books, since he did not look at me anymore, did not treat me like a wife anymore, and we were just housemates at this point. He was just waiting to finish processing the divorce papers so we could both sign and dissolve the marriage completely. I mean, it's not like he was the one swapping saliva with a stranger and frankly enjoying every minute of it. I was practically humping the man in the video, and I had been trying to explain to Zane that I was too drunk to understand what had happened, but of course Zane did not pay any mind to what I was saying. He was done with me, and I had no other option left than to pack up my bags. I had begged Zane to give me a little time to get myself in order, and then I would sign the papers without any complaint of any kind, and Zane had rolled his eyes at me, scoffing at my request but obliging nonetheless, waving me off as he left my office. He had actually been quite civil about the matter, but I knew very well that it was all only because he did not wish to have any embarrassing moment or disgrace of any kind attached to his person, so he had come to the office quietly and had not yelled at me as he demanded I sign the papers. He was angry. He was beyond angry, even. I looked at the documents again as I left my office, heading home. Well, not really home since it lacked the usual warmth, and Zane was currently crashing at his sister's place. I had taken to living there for the past 3 months since I had confronted him, and we had talked about that godforsaken video, and he lashed out, pulling me to our former, thank the heavens, soundproofed shared bedroom where he proceeded to berate me and call me names from whore to using some other expletives to describe me, and saying that a cheater had no right to question him who had been so faithful to me since before we were even married. His words had frankly hit me where it hurt and had left me completely speechless before him. Zane had always been a master at hiding his emotions and reactions so well that he only let you see what you wanted to see. I knew him that well. But I did not know him well enough, apparently, because as soon as those papers were in his hands, he immediately ordered me out of the house. I was taken aback. Zane explained that everything that had happened had been leading up to that very moment. The moment when I would leave his house and I could feel my eyes and cheeks getting wet. I was crying. Zane merely rolled his eyes and asked if witches cried in any other situation other than the bedroom, and I choked on a sob as I asked him what he meant, and another voice from upstairs. A labored voice answered for Zane from upstairs. It was Zane's older sister wheeling a fairly large suitcase down the stairs, panting in exhaustion before finally giving up and throwing the box down the stairs in anger. Zane laughed at his sister when she panted out that she did not know how a woman that was not serious about marriage could own so many belongings in the house of a man she had no intention of staying with. The siblings laughed together at their own joke at my expense while I just looked on dumbfounded as they played with my misery, and while I did not want to give them the satisfaction of seeing me break, I could not really help it. I broke down there and then and cried like a child while the siblings scoffed and called my tears of anguish crocodile and walked past me. Zane stopped in his tracks and told me to ensure that I leave the house soonest, by evening or right away if I could even. He added that I should leave the other clothes in the wardrobe, that is, other than the clothes in the suitcase that his sister had dragged downstairs. I did not need to pack them up as well since it was Zane himself that had gotten those clothes for me. Zane looked at me with disgust and told me that he would rather burn them than let me take them with me since I would not be taking the rings in the car too. I turned sharply at this and found Zane staring at me with a sad expression before he rolled his eyes and walked out of the house to meet his sister who was waiting for him in the car. Zane had been the reason why the rings were gone. I did not lose them, and the car was not at an auto shop for repairs or maintenance. Zane had taken everything that he had ever given me in the marriage. That was how Zane decided to punish me for my actions. My tears wouldn't stop flowing, and I could not stop myself from crumpling the brown envelope in my hands as I kicked my legs out and sat on the floor, pulling at my hair like a desolate woman in mourning. Yeah, I was definitely in mourning. I was beyond devastated. Update. I figured out the video was shot by the chief bridesmaid of my friend, the friend who had thrown the bachelor party I had attended that started all the drama. Tasha, the chief bridesmaid, was the culprit, and it was obvious because the angle of the video was where she had been seated. Tasha had her eye on Zane for so long, and the party was the perfect excuse to drive a wedge between Zane and I. Tasha planned to end my marriage so she could waltz in after making me look like a loose whore and painting herself as an absolute angel. My friend Melody had told me that it was the Tasha in question that had suggested the drunken game of truth or dare, and she was the one who I had trusted to the point of downing whatever shot Tasha brought to me. I let her pour me shot after shot until I was more than a half drunk, and she encouraged me to play the game. Melody told me that she had gone upstairs with her husband-to-be earlier. If not, she would have stopped Tasha herself. Tasha had been the one to anonymously send the video to my husband, and since she was a damn colleague at Zane's workplace, she had been trying to make advances at him again since the video had been sent. Melody had confronted Tasha, and she had confessed to doing all of it, and she woefully lamented that Zane had known that she wanted him, and had still rejected her despite divorcing me. Tasha had looked me dead in the eye and said that if it were in a different setting, she would have paid to have men sleep with, and it would all be taped so it would look like an affair, and my husband would have done more than divorce me. I was shocked to hear that from a person I called my friend, and it made me reevaluate how I made friends. And while it was a relief to find out that I had in fact been set up, it still did not change anything because I was still at fault, not only in Zane's books but also in mine, because no amount of intoxication would excuse my kissing another man and letting him grope me in a party filled with, although equally drunk and carefree, friends and acquaintances as a married woman that I was. And while I did enjoy the kiss, I did not want it to lead to my marriage being ruined. Kane did not listen to what I had to say, and he told me that nothing would change his mind because he did not want a careless woman for a wife, no matter the situation. I know I can't change anything, but I lost the man I love because I got too drunk. I hate that, and be careful who you call your friends. I know it's still my fault.